We are back here at Front Office U Fridays, here with a special guest, also here with my co-host, Thomas. Thomas, how's everything going today?
Doing great. How are you doing, Victor?
I'm doing well, and I'm sure Cooper's doing even better. I think the weather in Minnesota, if I do recall, is pretty nice right now compared to at least Seattle here, where it's constantly raining, which seems to be the season during the summer. So, with that being said, we're here with Cooper Rowe, who's a student at the University of Minnesota, but also is a intern for the Minnesota Vikings. Cooper, how's everything going? How's the weather over there?
It's good. Yeah, weather's great. Gotta love Midwest summers. Sunny and 80 degrees pretty much every day. So that's great. But yeah, everything else is going good.
Awesome to hear that. And yeah, I miss them. I'm originally from Minnesota, so definitely whenever I get there, I tend to go there during the winter, believe it or not, to play hockey. But the summers are nice. It does get a little bit hot at times where you kind of want to, cool off, go somewhere else. But I'll pass it here to Thomas to kind of dive deeper on your college as well as, what kind of made you choose sports management.
Thank you, Victor. Super nice to meet you. Glad you're on the podcast. First one to ask you, what made you choose the University of Minnesota?
Well, going into school, I kind of knew that I wanted to go the sport management route. They have a great program for it, and I knew that would be really good. I also knew that being in the Twin Cities would kind of have a lot of work opportunity. Just having all four major sports so close to campus. It really was kind of a no-brainer in terms of the professional side, and then just in terms of the social aspect, I liked being in the Twin Cities just because there'd always be something to do. Some of the other Big Ten schools I visited, it's the campus itself is great, but then you're, in the middle of cornfields and stuff like that. So not really a ton going on outside of school. So I liked that. And when I visited, I loved the campus, loved all the people I met, everyone who I knew who either went there or had family that went there. Everyone had great things to say, and I kind of just got that feeling that I didn't really get about other schools. I could see myself going there for the next 4 years.
Nice. I was going to ask my next question. What sport experience did you get in college, and what made you pursue a sports career?
Well, for what made me pursue a career in sports, it kind of all started back in high school. I'd say my sophomore year of high school, a couple buddies and I, we kind of started all the sports media for our high school athletics department. Started running, Instagram, Twitter, kind of all the socials, photo, video, kind of doing a little bit of everything. And we all kind of knew that's what we wanted to do, and started our sports media club there. And we're lucky enough to work with the athletics department there, and cover a lot of awesome teams there. It was a lot of fun, and there were kind of three main guys, and now we're all at different schools, all still working in sports, and it's been amazing. So that's kind of how I knew I wanted to work in sports. I knew that I'd always been into sports as a kid. Growing up, I played sports my whole life, and I kind of knew that's what I wanted to do. I didn't really want the sit in a cubicle 9 to 5 kind of thing. That's not really for me. But I love just the getting after it in sports, and kind of the crazy hours, the long nights. That's what makes it the best. But and then in school, my freshman year, the first thing I did there was get involved with that in the Gopher Athletics department. Worked my whole freshman year unpaid, just kind of volunteer hours here and there. And then that paid off. Going into my sophomore year, they offered me a paid job. I'm one of the lead social media interns within the communications department, and that's kind of my main gig there. And then through that, I got into the communications department with the Minnesota Vikings, and that's just been an incredible experience. Met a lot of cool people. So those are kind of my two main gigs that I've gotten through school.
Wow, that's phenomenal. Thank you for sharing that. Kind of going back to what you were talking about just a few moments ago, what sports did you play when you were younger that kind of caused all this where you are now?
Yeah, so I played baseball my whole life, like majority of other young kids growing up. Started with Little League and kind of played through my freshman year of high school, and always loved baseball. Baseball is so much fun to play. So always been a baseball guy, even today. Still always watch a game. I'm a White Sox fan, which these past couple years has been unfortunate, but starting to turn it around this year, thankfully. But yeah, baseball's always been my thing. And then kind of in middle school, just on a whim, I decided my middle school had a boys volleyball team, and I decided to join that and loved it, fell in love with the sport. Played it all 4 years of high school. Was on varsity my junior and senior year, and that was kind of my main sport. And still play today. I still play intramural at school. Still play beach volleyball tournaments. So yeah, growing up, kind of baseball and volleyball were my main sports.
Nice, kind of throwaway question, but with volleyball and baseball, was there a position that you played in? I don't know volleyball as well, but in baseball or volleyball, was there a position that kind of made you have more a love for sports, or kind of gave you the drive that uh, made you want to pursue sports, or kind of just like, well, okay, if I'm like a first baseman or a pitcher, like I really want to pursue sports, or just work harder, or if the question makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Oh, in baseball, I was always a first baseman. Loved playing first base. It was great, but one of the things that I really liked about first base is that, no matter the play or what's happening on the field, you're kind of always in the play. You're always being dependent on, and I liked, being like that. If you're playing right field, majority of the game you're not doing a whole lot. So I liked first base just because that, every play that happened, I was involved in it. And then that kind of translated over to volleyball. And volleyball, I was a setter. So kind of, most people say it's kind of like the quarterback of volleyball. You're deciding who gets set and who's hitting and stuff like that. So I also like that you're kind of always involved no matter what's happening on the court or on the field. And I would say that that's kind of translated over into working in sports. I like being involved, in everything, especially social media. There's so much going on that you're always kind of doing something, whether it's something little, just like clipping a highlight or something, to something big, making a graphic, writing post game notes, stuff like that. So yeah, I'd say that's definitely translated over, and I definitely like, the aspect of always being involved in some sort of fashion.
Well, thank you. And my last question before I hand it over to Victor, was what is something that has set you apart from others?
Um, I would say that something that kind of sets me apart is, you know, 99% of the time when working in sports, like I'll never say no to an opportunity. Um, just because, especially in college, like you never know who you might meet, or what connection you might have that could lead to that first full-time job, or what experience you could have that would give you the skills to land a job in sports, just because it's such a competitive field, and kind of anything, any kind of experience you can put on a resume will definitely help more than it'll hurt. So yeah, I would say, going to school, I never really said no to anything. I mean, like I said earlier, I worked my entire freshman year unpaid, and I know that most college students would see that and be like, screw this, like I'm getting a paid job somewhere else. But yeah, I kind of knew that's what it would take, and it paid off this year. And um, yeah, I've had some great opportunities, all across the country, and it's been an amazing experience. And even those late nights where you're not getting paid, is those that's some of the time where you can learn the most, actually. I've learned a ton just from working, learning from other professionals, and just being around them. You get to see um, the what it takes to be successful in an environment like that, but you also get to see, um, when little things go wrong, how do you handle it, or things like that. So, Yeah, just that's what I would say. Just never saying no to opportunity where you could learn and meet the people in sports.
Well, thank you so much. I'm gonna send it over to Victor now.
Yeah, I just love hearing about that, Cooper. Just the fact of saying, essentially, a lot of people in this industry, as you know, they'll say no if they don't want to do something, and then someone else will take that position, and then they'll actually grow, and the other person's like, shoot, like that could have been me if I actually said yes. So I think that's huge for our listeners to learn as well as just understand, especially for you taking an unpaid internship your freshman year. A lot of people are like, oh, what are you doing? But like now where you look at it, like, holy cow, like gosh, I should have been in Cooper's position, put myself up for success. But I also, am impressed in the fact on the social media side. So, I believe you said your high school that you helped them and everything. Like, I never even thought that was an option, to be honest. As a college student, I was like, oh, I just assumed like, oh, I'll just help colleges and stuff. But for high schools, because I think a lot of people don't know this, like it seems like there's a lot of opportunity for growth there as well, especially high school that you have, ties to and have that relationship with. So I'm just kind of curious on like, was it when your buddies and you went there, was it more just like, hey, like what can we do to help grow your guys' platform?
Yeah, I mean, before we were there, it was pretty much non-existent. I mean, we physically went on Instagram and created the account. But yeah, we walked in there saying, is there any way we can help? Like, it wasn't at that point, I don't really think any of us knew that we wanted to go in the sports direction. We were kind of just like, oh, this, seems cool. Maybe it could lead to something later, but we weren't even walking in there being like, hey, we're trying to get experience in the sports industry. I mean, we were 15, 16 years old. Like, we were just like, yeah, this looks cool. And they were like, you can help, what ideas do you have? What do you envision this being like? And it was great. All the people in the athletics department were super helpful with us. They also loved that, students were kind of taking an interest in what they were doing. And high school athletics especially is kind of delayed from like the progress that high and college departments and pro athletic departments have in terms of media coverage. So a lot of high schools don't have a lot of that, and so there's always growth opportunities within high school athletics department if high schoolers are wanting to get involved. And also the great thing about being in high school is, I mean, everybody there, whether it's a teacher that's also helping in the athletics department or they have sole athletics employees, like everybody's there to help students grow and learn. So that's the best part about it is that you can kind of shape it into both a learning and professional development opportunity.
It's great to hear that, right? Like looking at both lenses and the way, being 15, 16 years old, I can tell you I definitely did not do that. And I kind of, look back like, dang, maybe I could have helped my high school, maybe make that to the next level. And I think the biggest thing too is just like being there for, those students, right? Like you're saying, like they need some kind of voice. And in high school, which we all know, minus maybe Texas, where like I feel like they do pretty good on the football side, at least for like broadcasting those games, but on the social media side and just the impact that you're able to have, as well as just the faculty and people that work on the athletic side, is pretty incredible. And something we tend to talk about quite a bit nowadays is the social media aspect. So I'd be curious to hear like what is something that maybe you learned right away, like where you're like, holy cow, I didn't realize this was going to have such a big factor. And then like when someone says when it comes to social media that you're on like 24/7, I'm assuming maybe for the one there, it probably wasn't 24/7, but I know a lot of social media positions and such, like you're constantly on your phone, like you're probably, posting more on the team's page versus like messaging your own buddies and friends and family. So I'm just curious on kind of like what you guys kind of learned right away and like what maybe adjustment you had to make while you kind of, you always reflect and look at what, you accomplished.
Yeah, well, yeah, I definitely agree with you. Social media, you're on 24/7 for sure. I can't tell you how many late nights I've had either in the office or on site at a game. And, um, it might be long hours, but honestly, those are some of my best, memories from working in sports. When you're sitting in a room, two or three other people on your team, and it's like 1 in the morning or something, and you're trying to figure out, how to wrap it up and stuff like that. But um, yeah, I mean, social media, the great part about social media is that it's always evolving. And, there's always new trends coming out and new ideas that are getting posted. And something that I've found works really well is telling stories of athletes that, the general fan might not get to experience. Um, I mean, just an example, I worked with the Northwestern Athletics Department, and they hosted the NCAA Women's Lacrosse National Championship a couple weeks ago in Evanston, and it was really cool to see the content that they posted from that. They got super awesome like on-field POVs of the players celebrating and just the genuine joy from sports from winning a big game like that. And that content, in my opinion, always does the best. Obviously there are exceptions to that. Like if you win a super big game or super big upset or whatever, your win graphic after that might get more clicks. But yeah, I would say just telling the stories of athletes is really awesome, and there's always new ways that are coming about. I mean, just the best part about working in social media is that anytime you're on social media, I mean, it could just be your personal account, just when you're sitting on the couch scrolling on your phone for 30 minutes and you get sucked in, but you can kind of go down a rabbit hole and you can take ideas from that and kind of translate it to work. So that's a really cool thing. And yeah, that's just one of the things I love about working in social media is that um, you have an idea one day and you kind of plan it, execute it, and then the next day you might wake up and be like, oh shoot, I should, try this out or try that out. And it's always kind of a changing atmosphere, and that's one of the best things about it.
Yeah, I feel like trial and error is like so important, especially on the social media side. Obviously, you don't want to post anything that can definitely, jeopardize your job, which I'm sure some social media people have done in their career. And like you look back at that, like, all right, probably not posting something like that, but also like I mean, I feel like there's so many trends now too that you like that I find on Instagram, and the next, I see a team doing it, and I'm sure that's, for you guys too, is probably like networking too and talking to other people who work in social media for other colleges or other teams are like, hey, like, what did you find successful? Like, I think we can all agree when you look at different teams' social media platforms and you see a lot more people following or like looking at it, I think you can kind of realize like, oh, maybe this is an organization we should, learn from and see what we can do. And, for your case too, like, gosh, late nights at 1 a.m. I can tell you that for me, I'm probably asleep. So the fact that you guys are still grinding away and getting content out there is pretty incredible. And I mean, you have a ton of experience. I mean, obviously, being a White Sox fan, I do have to ask, like, being a game day marketing and an assistant for the White Sox, I imagine that had to be a pretty like I don't know. For me, I'm a Twins fan, so if I got a job with the Twins, I'd be pretty emotional. Like, holy cow, this is my. I mean, I'm not going to be on the baseball field for obvious reasons, but just curious, for you, like, well, how that position came up, and like ultimately, like, was that something that you always, could have saw yourself doing potentially one day?
Yeah, well, I knew that summer I was coming back to Chicago, just to be home for the summer, and I was kind of every day just checking, the White Sox job pages, stuff like that, when they're hiring part-time employees for game days and stuff like that, and I applied for that job and was fortunate enough to get it, and it was super awesome to meet the, people in the front office and kind of hear what they had to say. I remember I went to their kind of like professional development day where they had a lot of the part-time college students come in and you could talk to a panel of front office people, and we kind of did like a speed dating version where you kind of got matched up with a person in the front office and you got to learn about all the different departments and stuff like that. So yeah, that was really cool, and it was cool to see, how their game day operations work. There's so many different departments in a pro sports team, and that's kind of what's different from that compared to college, where college, people are doing a lot more things per one person. It kind of is all over the place, but in pro sports, you know, so many different departments and everybody just sticks to one thing. But it's really unique to see how they can kind of cohesively work together and make sure that everything is kind of on point. And yeah, it was super cool to get to work for them. Being in places of the ballpark I'd never been before was super awesome to see. And yeah, overall that was a really great experience.
I think the panel by itself is incredible. I think a lot of teams, if they are listening, you got to do that. I feel like that's where you build your you build your pipeline, right? You build the opportunities to have potentially you come back at one day at a high level and like look back at like, hey, I went to this panel and learned from different departments. Because like you said, like college, your position's basically 16 positions in one versus in a sports
Mhm.
team that's established, owned by obviously an ownership group. They have a lot of different departments, and there's probably like 5 to 10 people. On the sales side, it's probably more like 20 to 40 people. And so for you, it's just like you're by yourself. You're just, Cooper just trying to do social media, trying to, be out there on the operations side. And like college, it's also more than just one sport, right? You're not just obligated to do hockey or football. Like you're doing hockey, football, volleyball. I know volleyball has been pretty big for the U of M. Like you're doing a lot
Mhm.
more. And I think that's something that a lot of people when they do go into sports, they tend to like, oh, I just want to go to a professional sports team, which is fine. Like, don't get me wrong, but you're going to learn way more on the college side. And as you can allude to it, like you learn a lot more. You go to a pro team and like learn about their process, and you're like, wow, like this is way different than what I expect. And then when you tell them like what you're doing, they're like, geez, like once you're graduated, like come over here, like we got a job for you. Like you definitely be
Yep.
able to maximize it. And kind of, going on to your other experiences in the sports industry. Like I think it could be a whole hour podcast. I think we can all agree with how much you have on this resume. And I can tell you that any students, anyone that's trying to get in the sports industry, like listen to Cooper, like don't say no to anything. I think that could be the title of this whole podcast. Like no is not the answer. It's always yes. And so I'm just curious, now with where you're at right now at the University of Minnesota, like kind of curious on that side as you kind of said on the last the question there is that you're doing a lot more than just your basic one sport, right? For the White Sox, you're just focusing on the White Sox, right? You're not focusing on different teams and everything. So I'm kind of curious on like you probably get this question asked quite a bit, but like on an everyday basis, like what's kind of your strategy to be as efficient as possible, but also be able to get like the tasks done in hand, as having so many positions at the U of M.
Yeah, I would say, this sounds like kind of a basic answer, but I would say time management is key to success. Um, I'm fortunate enough that the sport management program is very lenient in terms of like when class times are and how you can schedule them. So a strategy that I've recently been doing these past few semesters that I've really liked is I tend to stack all my classes on 2 days of the week. So like last semester I only had class Tuesday, Thursday, and I was in class from like 9 to 3 or something like that. So that, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, it sucked because you were just sitting through class for, 6 hours or whatever that is. But um, those Monday, Wednesday, Friday, when I didn't have class, that's when I would really take advantage of my time. And I would, you know, getting up early and going into the office or going to the library or something and kind of knocking out school right away first so that that was just, done off my plate. And then I could focus on work. And especially during the school year, like, it gets busy, with all the sports going on and I'm the lead intern for Go for Women's Basketball and Go for Men's Hockey and those are both winter sports. So when those are both going full steam ahead, it can get a little hectic. I remember, I've live tweeted basketball games from the rink and that can get a little bit crazy and covering road events too is always interesting but a lot of fun and just being able to be like schedule I usually just try to take it 1 week at a time and I put all the games on my calendar and then I can kind of schedule around when I have to do office work, homework. I always try to leave time to, hang out with friends, do fun stuff just because, having a work life balance is important as well. But so always making time to kind of take a breather and take a step back is always nice. But yeah, just being organized with it. There's so many different ways you can manage your time, but as long as you have a system that works for you, I'd say just stick to it because if you don't and you start to forget to do one thing here or there, that's not an issue. But if it becomes a habit, then that can lead to bigger problems down the road. So just finding that system early to kind of organize everything will definitely pay dividends, later on once you land that full-time job.
Being organized, I feel is like such a word that everyone uses, but like how many are actually organized? Like I'll be a person say like I think I'm organized, but there's times where I miss stuff, and so I agree with the calendar thing. Like you kind of have to have that, and like when you schedule stuff, like make sure you put it on your calendar versus like oh I'm gonna remember it, but like let's be honest, if it's a busy day, especially in your as a student and a full time essentially worker, like you're probably going to forget stuff. So the fact that you can have a reminder, your phone says, "Hey, like be ready for the volleyball game, right? Or be ready for men's hockey," and like having that is like huge for you. And you kind of talked about traveling. So do you travel quite a bit? Because I know a lot of students as well as people trying to get in the sports industry, they're always interested on the college side too. If you're traveling with the teams for most of them, or is it like similar like what you were saying where you're at the hockey arena and you're live tweeting something for a volleyball. I was just kind of curious on what that looks like during the season.
Yeah, so I would say that for most road events, I'm covering it remotely. You're able to pretty easily live tweet and post on Instagram and stuff like that remotely. Just watching the broadcast, getting clips from that, stuff like that, and we always have photo and video people on site no matter where they go, so they can always just send me their content and I can throw it up there on the pages, and that's kind of a good system we have. I was fortunate enough that I traveled with women's basketball to the Big Ten tournament. That was an awesome experience, and then we got to host the first two rounds of March Madness on campus for us, so didn't have to travel for that one, but that was also really cool. And I've been to handful of other games, especially when the Gophers come to events around Chicago, just because I can kind of combine that with a trip home, visit the parents, stuff like that. I worked Gopher football when they played Northwestern at Wrigley Field. That was an amazing experience. Just being able to witness football in a venue like Wrigley Field, and I was at the men's Big Ten tournament here in Chicago this past March, and but yeah, I would say majority of events just for college in general. On the social side, you're working remotely, just because it's essentially so easy to do stuff remotely. For socials in general, it's a little bit different when you're photo and video because you kind of have to be on site for that. So that's definitely more traveling for them. Um, but yeah, I would say that, if you have the opportunity to travel, especially when you're in school, like it's awesome. You get to see, a whole new side of the athletes, get to learn a lot and interact with different fans, stuff like that. So it really is a valuable experience.
I like how you brought up of like, it just depends on during the season as well as just like, traveling, you learn a lot more when you think about, especially on the social media side, which I know you can agree with because of the amount of social media's, opportunities you've had with just coverage. And then also to be honest, I had no clue that you could take clips off of like the live stream. So shows you something I'm learning as well. I just assumed that like you guys were just fully invested there and stuff. And now it makes a lot more sense. And everything on that end. And something that we've had a lot of students ask, and I'm curious on your takes because you did bring up basketball and you played baseball and volleyball when you were younger, but you never brought up basketball. So I'm just assuming you didn't play basketball. But a lot of students are asking or always worried like, hey. I don't know anything about basketball. Like, I can't apply for anything there. So I'm just curious on what your thoughts are because, like, believe it or not, we have a lot of people who do reach out and they're like, Victor, like I want to apply for this position, but like I've never played this in my life. I have no clue what the heck like it entails. And so I'm just curious on like what your advice would be for those students who could potentially have that opportunity, but they're just looking the other way because they don't have any, knowledge of the sport itself.
Yeah, I would say that, as long as you're willing to learn and get the knowledge you need to do whatever job it is you're trying to get, you'll be fine. I mean, especially, in college sports, just because there's so many different sports, like there will be people working certain events where they have no idea what's going on. And, I'll use same example I've already used, like when I was at the women's lacrosse national championship when I was working that, like I had never neither worked nor been to a lacrosse game before that. And I had no knowledge of lacrosse. I knew that you had to put the ball in the net. That's about the extent of my knowledge about lacrosse. But by the time the weekend ended, like I've felt like, I was a serviceable lacrosse fan. Like I knew what certain fouls were and stuff like that. And I didn't even lacrosse has a penalty box. I didn't know they had that, but um, yeah, I just, you might go in with no knowledge, but by the time you're done with your first game, I guarantee you'll know way more than you think you do. And I would honestly say that's the best way to learn is just, go to a game, watch it, even if it's before you're applying or starting the job, just trying to expose yourself to that sport is the quickest way to learn and it, just seeing it in real life just makes it make so much more sense.
Well, you know more about lacrosse than I did. I knew you had to obviously get the ball in the net, but I didn't know there's a penalty box. Obviously, there's a lot of other things where it's like I guess you have to be the first one to touch. If it goes out of bounds, I think you have to run. I think I would do
Yeah.
good at that point, but besides the passing, like I don't know how they keep it in the basket. Like that'd be pretty embarrassing. I think I played a little bit, and it's always like comes back this way when I try to throw it out. So
Yeah.
definitely would be a bench kind of play, a utility player, but like you were saying, like just you got have to put yourself out there. Like if you don't, like you're gonna shut down opportunities. And like you said, like don't say no to any, don't say no to opportunities because opportunities in this industry don't come as fast as one might think. And the last question I have here, and until we pass it to the Flash Friday questions here is, and it's a professional baseball prep program participant for the Miami Marlins. I know you're a White Sox fan, so I'm just curious on how that came down and then what that experience entailed, because I think that's pretty incredible to be able to get that, experience, especially in a nicer climate, let's say, than Chicago and Minnesota during the winter.
Yeah, well, I saw it, it popped up on my LinkedIn feed one day. I'm like, usually I'm trying to make a habit at least once a day, just kind of sit down, scroll for 10 minutes on LinkedIn, see what you can find. That's honestly how I've gotten half of my jobs. It's just like something pops up and anything I remotely might be interested in, I always just apply for it, even if, you don't get it or you get an interview and then you realize it's not for you. Like that's totally fine. But I always just apply for things when I'm able to. And I saw this come across my feed and the Marlins put on a great series of like informational interviews kind of. They usually interview like one person from a different department within the Marlins organization every week, and it was awesome. You got to learn a ton. You also got to network with all the other people that were in the calls, and that was huge. Like every call, I'd be getting like 20 new LinkedIn connections or something like that. But yeah, it was great. Someone like me coming from kind of the communication side, it was really cool to hear about people, in facilities or in equipment or, even on the baseball side, like scouts, trainers, stuff like that. So that was really cool and learned a lot. And it's just like those opportunities where it might not seem like the biggest thing, but being able to learn from industry professionals is always good. And even, people who I work with on a daily basis, whether it's from the Gophers or from the Vikings, like always trying to learn from them and get advice because you never know when you might need to use that advice, especially, as you're getting older and trying to land those full-time jobs, trying to convert from an internship to full-time and you never know when you might need some advice or might need to go back to someone and ask them a question or for a recommendation or something like that. So kind of just always reaching out to people and learning from people who are already in the industry.
Yeah, knowing more people and networking as well as just the opportunity to have that. Like I said, I can't say enough. I wish every organization did that because that opens a lot more doors. It gives more transparency what the job entails. And I'm sure the fact that you're able to network with scouts and people who, for most part, you reach out to them, you're probably not going to get a response because they don't know who the heck you are. But now like they might have a little bit idea like, oh yeah, I remember that guy. Like he's pretty chill. Like, let's for sure catch up, right? And so
Yeah.
that's the cool part with this industry is if you actually do invest yourself and put yourself out there, you're gonna find success no matter where you're at. And that leads us to the Flash Friday questions. So these are the questions that we get to ask you that are kind of outside of sports. I'll say some of them are sports related because that's just how we are here. But I'll start off here first, and I'll pass it to Thomas. But first question for you is if you had an NIL deal, I know it's huge right now, like what company would you sign with and then what would you want the demands to be like? You could be Chick-fil-A where it's like, oh, I get a sandwich each day or something. So I'm just curious. Always makes it easier for people to connect, especially our listeners.
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm trying to think. I mean, I would probably say like some kind of clothing brand, like maybe like a Patagonia or like a Lululemon or something. I don't know. Those are just two brands that I wear kind of on a daily basis. But something like that where you could, you'd be like, hey, give me, half off on all my purchases or like a free item every week or something like that. I feel like that could kind of be like the most useful thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, I would love a free Chick-fil-A sandwich every day. That would be amazing. But I feel like after a while, I begin to get sick of it, and with clothes, you can kind of keep them for a while, and it would be you'd have a massive closet at the end of your 4 years if you're an athlete. So I feel like that's probably the route I would go.
Yeah, you're looking at the ROI where return on
Yeah.
investment versus like, yeah, food's gonna be great for that maybe that 10 minutes or 20 minutes, but after that, like if you can wear something, feel great about it, and be like, yeah, like they're I'm basically like their brother, right? Where they're able to give me stuff when I need it and stuff. So that's a great answer. I think that's one of the first time we've had a clothing. Someone saying about clothing. Usually it's like food or someone actually brought on, I think, deodorant. That was an interesting one. I was
Ooh.
like, maybe take that off camera and see why that's the case. But the second question I have here for you is if you run the Chicago White Sox, you guys win the World Series, like where are you taking the trophy first, and why?
Ooh, that's a good question. Hmm. I would say I would take it, around my hometown, just, being able to take a picture with it in all the places I went to growing up. Be really cool to take it, to like my elementary school or something like that, just where I met a lot of my friends and kind of seeing where I grew up and being able to bring that back. Yeah, I mean, I love like what the NHL does, where you kind of get a day with the cup and you kind of get to bring it wherever you want. Yeah, but I mean, I would say that or either to school, like just the places where I hang out with my friends. Yeah, I would say just places where other people can enjoy it, along with me.
Yeah, it takes your whole environment around you. Like all those people, got you to where you're at, and you never know. You maybe one day you're, part of the White Sox organization and get the opportunity to do that. And so I always have to ask that, especially when it comes to baseball, because baseball is a little bit different than the NHL when it comes to having time with it. So I'll pass it here to Thomas to ask his.
Thank you, Victor. Incredible Flash Friday questions. I don't know how I'm going to top those today. Um, First, since you work with the Vikings and the White Sox, I wanted to ask, and being a student, any tips for students going to a White Sox game or a Vikings game, maybe on saving a little money or places to go or a favorite bite to eat or any advice for students that are listening to this that are in that area that are may go to a Vikings or a White Sox or just NFL or MLB game? Just a question.
Yeah. I would say I know that my biggest advice is that at school we go to Twins games a lot just because it's so close to campus and they're fortunate enough that the Twins do $5 student tickets, which is amazing. If anyone from the Twins is listening to this, keep doing that, because it's a great way to get into the ballpark for cheap. But we sit right behind the family value section. So I think it's a newish rule in the MLB where every stadium has to have like a family value sec or stand where you can get food for relatively cheap. So if you're going with a big group of people or an entire family, like it's not, you're not spending $100 every time you want to go get food. So we always sit behind there and we always make sure to go to the games on Dollar Dog Night. So it's great. We can go there, have a good time. Everyone gets like four hot dogs for $4, and it's a great way to enjoy the game and save some money. And I know that, whether it's the Twins or the White Sox or any other team, they're always doing special promos like that, especially for students. So keep your eye out for those. And usually, like, it's honestly most of the time in those like newsletter emails. A lot of people consider those like junk emails or whatever. Maybe they go to your spam. But if you dig into those emails, you can find some pretty good deals. So that's honestly my biggest recommendation.
Perfect. And I guess I was Victor just asked the great Flash Friday questions. Uh, so I'm gonna have to dig deep here. Um, what's well, here's a question. When you actually graduate, what's your graduation ceremony gonna be like for you? Are you gonna do any kind of big gestures as you cross the stage?
Um, that's a good question. Um, I don't know. I mean, the cool thing about my graduation is it's in our hockey arena on campus, and that's going to be, a special moment for me just because working with the hockey team for at that point it'll have been 4 years, and that'll just be a really, full circle moment, and it'll mean a lot being able to graduate in that building that I've worked in so many times. So. I don't know, maybe like, yeah, pointing up at the press box or something like that at the seat where I've sat at for so many games. Yeah, if I was gonna do a gesture, that's probably what it would be.
Perfect, nice. And finally, any kind of we have this question in our regular thing. Is there any like mentor or anybody that in like teacher that give you like any words of advice that you would want to say to anybody? Maybe a little deep, but any words of advice to students or listeners? Uh, you can keep it short if you want or whatever, but just word of advice for anybody, just whatever you want to say.
Yeah, you know, learn this a lot from people in the sports industry, and I know that, one person that kind of stands out is my brother is a professional hockey player, and him being in that position, is always locked in, always grinding, stuff like that. And I kind of learned from him that, in order to be successful, it takes a lot of hard work. And I would say that, some advice that I would have is don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. I've said it many times, but kind of those late nights are some of the best times, and it'll pay off. Trust me, I know it sucks when you're not going to bed until 3, 4 in the morning, but it'll pay off, and the reward is so much better than the next morning when you wake up on 5 hours of sleep. But yeah, I would say just don't be afraid to work hard. Don't be afraid to say yes to opportunities that might put you out of your comfort zone. I know I've done that plenty of times, and it's worked out so well for me. Just kind of branching out. Yeah, I would say just hard work will definitely pay off in the long run.
And that's great to end on there. And before we wrap up here, Cooper, how can our listeners further conversation for you? Is it over LinkedIn, over email? Where can our listeners, obviously keep the conversation going and build that relationship with you?
Yeah, I would definitely say LinkedIn is the best way to contact me in terms of professional things. I'm always on it. So that's kind of my best place. Feel free to connect with me, ask me any questions. Always happy to help anybody. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, we want to thank you again, Cooper Rowe, for being on the podcast here. Thanks, Thomas, for being here as well. And we'll be back here next Friday with another podcast.